Was those 10 acres of opium fields in downtown Kandahar during the war that the guerrillas were openly harvesting in front of the Russian army. The Russian generals were making so much money in the heroin trade by then. In '85, I shot that that was money land. That wasn't the war zone. That was the money zone. Nobody messed with that area. There's just too much money at stake there. Too many important people in Moscow, Russian mafia that you had to satisfy. And they used military transport. They flew it back. And
I think the sad part about it, and the part that made me actually quit going back to Afghanistan, was that we knew, the Afghan guerrillas knew, that they could end that war and save 1 million lives if we had just given them heat-seeking missiles.
They kind of blame me because I'm this American, representative, whether I was or not, whether all I was doing was shooting film. I was their representative, and they turned on me and said, "You're fucking us up. We're losing lots of men because you won't give us heat-seeking missiles." Heat-seeking missile. One guy carries it into the field. It's disposable after you fired it, so you can run like hell, and you can't miss. And the guerrillas knew that. They'd stolen enough of the Russian ones. They knew they worked, and they knew if they had them, the Russians wouldn't have any stronghold. The Afghans had beat them on the ground. The tanks were worthless, and the only power the Russians really had was in the air. And the Afghans knew that, begged us for missiles, and we intentionally, because we wanted to addict the Russian soldiers, didn't want to end that war. We could have ended that war. And when we finally got so guilt-ridden that we gave them missiles in 1986, a year later, the Russians were losing an average of a plane a day. They walked out unconditionally, left everything behind and walked out. Said, we don't want anything to do with it anymore. But, did we do that 10 years earlier and save 1 million lives? No.
It seems quite clear that there was an organized effort to use drugs to corrupt the Soviet, and possibly even beyond that, to gain access to organized crime as a possible CIA asset in the Soviet Union. And from one point of view, one has to say it was definitely a factor in demoralizing the Soviet army and increasing the travails that led to the end of the Soviet Union. It also has vastly and permanently increased the drug problems of Western Europe.
We created a big opium industry that today bin Laden and the Taliban manipulate as middlemen to help finance their struggle against the ultimate buyers of this heroin. So we're actually funding terrorism ourselves. I was there recently in '01 and went to the most dangerous place you can go, what they call the Hillman Valley, where Mullah Omar is living. I go in there, I dress my cameraman so nervous, he dresses up like a woman. He's in the taxi dressed up like a girl, just shrinking. He's getting shorter. We go to this big compound out in the desert, and the grower there, and the opium's tiny little plants. They just had planted it, they'd already harvested. But he's got all these. I wanted to go because they'd already harvested and they were smuggling out. He brings out these bags of black tar that weigh 30 kilos each, and he's got 3 or 4 of them sitting in front of me. He says, "Oh yeah, this is a new car. This is another wife." It's obvious how much money he's making from this business. And he's saying, bin Laden's my biggest buyer. He's the one buying all this stuff. It's his ships that are taking it out of Pakistan. We shut down all his legitimate accounts. We shut down all his charitable contributions. So what's the man going to do? He's going to make as much money as he can to support his group. So, and I say bin Laden, it's his, it's a group of men that are really loyal, not only to him, but to him more as a prophet.
سپک خلک د وطن د خلکو سره نسی شرمنو 100 کیلو 50 کیلو دې ته موږ تجاران نه وای هغه بلوڅان دي په اړیکو کې پراته دي هغه بیا تجاران دي هغه راځي دغه خلکو سره نسی دا څنګه نه خلکو سره هغه بیا هغه ته د تجارت نسته بسنګي.
Oh, I was just saying that when I was younger I used to write all of Chris's stories off as just fiction or just him BSing us. Because it wasn't, when we were younger, it wasn't something that my grandparents or my dad or whatever, really wasn't really appropriate material probably to be sharing with us. But Chris had no problem telling us about it. But just as I got older and started hearing the stories, you know, over and over again. I started hearing, you know, more people telling the same stories, you know. Or, you know, I'd hear a story and or, you know, I'd tell my dad, I'd be like, yeah, I guess what Uncle Chris said, you know, and my dad would be like, you know, would tell me, he'd start telling the story. And I'd be like, oh, you know the story. And, you know, he'd go into other stories and I'd go back and ask Chris and Chris would relay them for me. So it was just kind of like, I guess as I got older, they got more validity or true because I started, like, you know, people in my family and acquaintances, my uncle, like, everybody had these same stories. And so that's kind of where, and then I guess, you know, when I got, you know, after 9/11, he took back off to Afghanistan. I guess that just really kind of solidified and reaffirmed that, you know, he really was there and that he did do some of these things.
I went in again in 2001 after 9/11 because Afghanistan, you know, I hadn't been there in 20 years, and last trip was 85. It's almost 20 years, and I love it dearly, and it was an integral part of my youth and young adulthood. And so I thought, well, I'll go in with a camera and I'll try to capture it as I saw it, you know, the old Afghanistan, not this terrorist camp that we see it as. I thought they were trying to make it too black and white. So I spent 6 months, you know, prepping, studying Pashto and growing a beard, you know, going over some of the lineage of the tribe, you know, doing some research and, you know, remembering names that I should know and refreshing myself. And then I took a lot of the 16 mm film I had and actually pulled stills from it so I could go back into this war-torn zone and give away pictures of dead family members that I had photographed 15 years before, 20 years before, you know, that are no longer with us.
War da gulaga da plat be ajil chipli.
Gulaga da ajil chipli.
War.
Da ajil chipakari.
War.
Bishak. Da gulaga akashi.
War. Da. War. बिल्कुल सही था वही पमलने का फिर पमलने हाँ he told right
da ko yo lambar pa daranga da na midi
हुआ
yo lambar sorry
Da Hayatan.
Da dikap da
Ayat Khan?
Yeah, Hayat Khan.
Ayat Khan so.
Well, commandant. Yeah, Malajat,
Malajat commandant da wayna. Falk Malajat commandant okay so biya secondary.
Dasili and the same family.
Say that.
It was a scary trip, you know. I didn't know how I'd be accepted. And I had a lot of faith in the people when I was living there all the time, but you know, after we bombed them, in fact, I lived with this nomadic family for a few weeks, filming them smuggling across the no man's land, the borders, the desert down there. When we were all done, I wanted to help. It was this old nomadic lady whose husband had died and 2 sons. So I got really close to her. We were, you know, she was feeding me and taking care of me, and I had paid her and helped her out and done what I could. And I said, Mother, what else can I do for you? And she said, you know what I want more than anything else? I want a wife for my son. My youngest son doesn't have a wife. And I said, oh, he's a beautiful man. And she had him all dressed up in silk, you know, and he was a beautiful boy, about 20. And she said, I can't find him a wife. Nobody will let their daughters go to a nomad. So that's what she wanted more than anything. And then she tells me, really, the last day I'm there, I asked her about her family. We're talking a little bit, and when her husband left her, and she had an older son who happened to be, they were camping near where Mullah Omar had his palace outside of Kandahar in the Agundal Valley, an area where I used to work and live. So they bombed that area to catch Mullah Omar and killed her oldest son. The Americans did. And here I've been living with this woman for 2 weeks. She's treating me like a son, and then she tells me that my country killed her son a month ago. And I'm going, oh, it's too bad. You know, I don't know. Politics are a dangerous game. I think better to be a pirate and stay out of it. When America goes, Taliban's back. Yeah.
Huh? You are against
ده انا خوبون لك مش مخي كتلش اسبر نوز مزبوط لي اسبر
يا خير ده خبر مشكلة ده كده بس مسوية
زايد سم كيورون برنا خلق
مرسل كي لكن لا مشكلة نكي
دا شي دا څنګه در په در شو دا علاقه ولا
Yeah,
خوشاله علاقه
explain to him that all Afghanistan, the only reason America's there really is to stop bin Laden and to bring peace so they can have business. America's work is business.
امریکا چې دورې دي د مقصد دا دی چې د بن لادن وباسي دلته امن جوړ کی کاروبار راولي او دا مسله چې کاروبار شروع شو وي بیا امن کیږي دا
ته بن لادن ولې باسي
Now what do you say?
Why you are pulling out bin Laden from there?
Why? Because from there he trains terrorists.
Why دغه د پاره چې هغه تخریبکاران هلته جوړي دا څه بن لادن د ځمکې
Bin Laden used America.
Bin Laden is a
CIA agent.
American CIA agent.
Yeah, many years ago. But now he has new agenda.
I was in Karachi because I was teaching as part of a special program for having American professors, and we were staying in one hotel, and suddenly we were asked to move to another hotel. And the reason for that apparently was because he had asked to be put near to us. So we were, in fact, when I met him, we were in the lobby of the hotel waiting to be moved to another hotel. He was tall, he was handsome, he looked like bin Laden. I knew he had a story.
About 10 o'clock at night, I just come back from filming all day, and I had been in an area where Al-Qaeda and Taliban were hiding out or living really pretty openly. And so they came in, 15 men with machine guns, immediately handcuffed me and sat me down, and I waited around for hours before the Americans arrived to interrogate me, and then they took me to a police station. They kept me for 2 days, interrogated me for 15 hours, and then they chained me and took me to the airport. Based on my relationship with the Pathans and my intimacy with groups of Pathans that were dealing directly with Al-Qaeda because of drug dealing connections. The American Embassy had me surveilled and realized I was going to what they said in their dossier as known Al-Qaeda safe houses around Karachi. At the very end of my trip, actually, I was filming around Karachi.
The FBI came to our door one day. There were 3 men in suits, and I was downstairs, and my husband was downstairs. No, he was upstairs. And he called me. He said, "Honey, get up here. The FBI's here." And they wanted to know about Chris. And I said, well, "He's right here." So we called him, and they wanted him to go into the mosque here. They wanted him to spy for them. That's what they wanted. They wouldn't tell us at first. And they said, "We want to meet him for lunch." And they said, "Nothing's wrong. We're not after him at all." His dad was so, 3 FBI men coming in and showing their badges. They said, "We just want to talk to him." So they asked him if he would spy for them and go over to North Kansas City to a mosque. And he called his friend in Washington who was, what was Joe, honey?
Joe McBride.
Joe McBride. What was he?
He's head of the drug enforcement in Afghanistan.
This was the man Chris had met last time he was in Afghanistan. So he called Joe, and Joe said, "Chris, don't do it. It'll endanger your family." So Chris didn't do it. But he was very smart to call Joe. We all said, "Oh, go on. The FBI wants you to do something."